The word evolution simply means change over time. In biology, it's the idea that all species change their traits from one generation to the next, becoming better suited to their environment. The most powerful, amazing part of this theory is the concept of common ancestry, that every living thing on Earth, from the smallest bacteria to the biggest blue whale, is related to you. If we trace back far enough, we share a single root on the tree of life. Understanding the evidence for this connection is key to understanding all of modern biology. Think of your family tree. You and your cousin share a common set of grandparents. Go back further, and you and a much more distant relative share a great-great-great-great-grandparent. Common ancestry is exactly like that, but on an immense time scale. The fact that all life uses the same 4 DNA bases, the same genetic code, and often the same basic chemical pathways, is the first and most fundamental piece of evidence. It's like finding every computer in the world uses the same operating system. It suggests they all came from a single designer. One of the most direct ways we see life's history is through the fossil record. Fossils are like snapshots of life from the past, trapped in stone. When we dig through the layers of Earth, we don't see modern life just appearing instantly. We see a gradual progression from simpler to more complex forms. Most compelling are the transitional fossils, which show characteristics of 2 different groups, like Archaeopteryx, a perfect blend of a feathered dinosaur and an early bird. It directly links 2 major groups, documenting a change in progress. To make sense of the fossil record, we rely on geology. Fossils are preserved in layers of rock called strata. Because lower layers of rock are deposited first, they are almost always older than the layers on top. This is called relative dating, and it gives us a clear chronological sequence. The life forms found deeper down are the ancestors of the life forms found closer to the surface. It's like reading a history book, where the oldest chapters are at the beginning, establishing the order of events. Relative dating tells us the order of events, but to know when they happened, we use absolute dating, specifically radiometric dating. This scientific technique uses the natural decay rate of radioactive isotopes, like carbon-14, found in rocks and fossils. Since these isotopes decay at a perfectly predictable rate, their half-life, scientists can mathematically calculate the exact age of a fossil. This provides concrete, verifiable time points that confirm the vast age of the Earth and the timescales required for evolution. Another powerful line of evidence is comparative anatomy, which involves comparing the physical structures of different species. Why would a human's arm, a cat's leg, a whale's flipper, and a bat's wing all share the exact same arrangement of bones? The simplest explanation is that they inherited that basic limb structure from a common ancestor. These similarities in underlying structure, despite differences in function, are powerful proof of a shared past. Structures that are similar because they were inherited from a common ancestor are called homologous structures. Think of it like this. Your grandfather gave you and your cousin the same basic engine design for your cars, but you adapted yours for the city, a small sedan, and your cousin adapted theirs for off-roading, a big truck. The basic design is the same, but the function has changed over time to fit different needs. This is divergent evolution from a common starting point. On the flip side, we have analogous structures. These structures have a similar function, but evolved entirely independently, meaning they do not share a recent common ancestor. Take the wing of a bird and the wing of a butterfly. They both allow flight, but their internal structure is completely different. This happens through convergent evolution, where unrelated species evolve similar solutions because they face similar environmental challenges, such as the need to fly or swim fast. Evolution isn't always about gaining new features. Sometimes it's about losing the need for old ones. Vestigial structures are remnants of organs or traits that were fully functional in an ancestor, but are now reduced and useless in the modern organism. Examples in humans include the appendix, our tailbone, and even our wisdom teeth. The tiny, useless leg bones found deep inside a whale's body are perhaps the most compelling example. Proof that whales evolved from a four-legged land mammal ancestor. When we look at embryology, the development of organisms before birth or hatching, we see amazing proof of our shared history. Early embryos of all vertebrates, fish, reptiles, birds, and mammals, look almost identical. They all temporarily develop gill slits and a tail, even if those features disappear before birth. This isn't because they're turning into fish, but because they are all running the same fundamental genetic programs inherited from a shared, ancient vertebrate ancestor. Evolution modifies existing instructions. It doesn't always start from scratch. Biogeography is the study of where species live today and where their ancestors lived. It makes sense that species evolve where they are located. For example, marsupials, like kangaroos, are dominant in Australia because that continent separated long ago, allowing them to evolve without competition from placental mammals. The classic example is Darwin's finches on the Galapagos Islands. They all descended from a single ancestral species that flew over. But then they evolved specialized beaks to suit the unique food sources on each individual island. A key concept in biogeography is the endemic species. These are plants or animals that are found only in one small, specific place on Earth, like a single island or valley. They are direct evidence of evolution in place. They likely evolved from a common ancestor that got there long ago, but because they were isolated, they adapted and diversified into unique species that are found nowhere else. If life didn't evolve, we'd expect the same species to be everywhere with the same climate. But we don't. The most detailed and modern evidence for evolution comes from molecular biology, specifically by comparing DNA. Since all life uses the exact same genetic code, we can compare the sequence of base pairs in the genes of different species. The rule is simple. The more similar the DNA sequence, the more recently the species shared a common ancestor. For instance, human DNA is over 98% identical to chimpanzee DNA, providing incredibly precise evidence of our close relationship. Another way to look at DNA is through gene homology. This means that many species share the exact same genes for basic life functions. Humans and yeast, for example, share many of the same genes that control cell division. Why? Because that common ancestor, way back in time, had that gene, and both yeast and human lineages kept it because it works perfectly for a basic cellular function. It's like finding the same essential instruction manual inside the most basic and the most advanced piece of technology. We can use certain proteins as a kind of molecular clock. Take the protein cytochrome C, which is vital for cellular energy production in nearly all organisms. We can compare the amino acid sequence of cytochrome C across different species. The number of differences between the sequences is directly proportional to how long ago those species diverged from their common ancestor. The more differences, the longer the time since they split. This molecular data consistently matches the timeline derived from the fossil record. Evolution isn't just a descriptive theory. It is quantifiable and testable using mathematical modeling. Scientists use population genetics to track changes in allele frequencies, the number of different gene versions over generations. The Hardy-Weinberg equation is a mathematical model that describes a hypothetical population where no evolution is occurring. Whenever a real population's gene frequencies deviate from the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, it mathematically proves that an evolutionary force, like natural selection, gene flow, or mutation, is actively changing the population. Evolution is often thought of as something that takes millions of years, but we can actually see natural selection in action in our lifetime. The rapid evolution of bacteria that become resistant to antibiotics is a perfect observable example. When we use an antibiotic, we kill the weakest bacteria, but a few might have a random mutation that makes them resistant. These resistant bacteria survive and reproduce quickly, and within a few years, the entire population has evolved to be immune to the drug. This shows the incredible speed and power of selective pressure. If you've ever looked at a tiny chihuahua next to a huge Great Dane, you've seen the power of artificial selection. Humans have been selectively breeding plants and animals for thousands of years, choosing individuals with desired traits to reproduce. This demonstrates that if there is a selective force, whether natural survival or human choice, and if there is genetic variation, the traits of a population can be dramatically changed in a short period of time. This process is a direct parallel to, and a smaller scale model of, natural selection. What makes the theory of evolution so strong is a concept called consilience. This means that multiple, completely independent lines of evidence, like fossils, anatomy, embryos, and DNA, all point to the exact same conclusion, that life shares a common ancestor and has evolved over time. The fossil record predicts a sequence of changes. Comparative anatomy shows the physical structures reflecting that sequence. And molecular biology shows the exact genetic path those changes took. When all the evidence agrees, it creates an almost undeniable scientific conclusion. Ultimately, evolution by natural selection is the unifying theory that makes sense of everything we see in biology. It explains the unity of life, why all species share the same DNA and basic cell structure, and the diversity of life, why the world is filled with millions of uniquely adapted species. It provides a consistent framework supported by overwhelming data from geology, physics, chemistry, and biology. It's not just an idea, it's the well-established explanation for how life on Earth came to be what it is today.